All right.
Yeah!
Hello, everybody. It's the Nothing Sacred Show.
Yes, I'm Maxwell Silverhammer.
And I'm Cruise Control. This is the interview show, Nothing Sacred Interview. A little bit late, better late than never. We've got Randy Sutton on the line. Go ahead, Brett, you do the rest of the intro here.
Retired police lieutenant of the Metropolitan Police Department. Randy, welcome to the show, man.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks, guys.
Hey, man, I just got done reading your book, which was really rocking, which we'll jump into in a second. But, you know, you and I got a little history, man. You want to tell that story real quick?
Nope. I don't want to tell the story. You tell that story.
Okay. Well, you know, I'm walking up the, I'll keep it short, but I'm walking up the street one day, you know, getting ready to catch the bus because I'm late for work, and these police officers stop me. And they say, sir, we're police officers. Do you want us to take you to where you need to go? And I said, well, you know, how can you prove that you're police officers? So Randy's buddy puts his badge directly in my face and goes, you see that? And I'm like, dude, the whole reason you stopped me is because I'm walking with a cane and I'm blind. So then he's like, I said, do you have an audio clue or something? So he walks me closer to the car and I hear the radio. So anyway, these guys drive me to work. They're cool as shit. And so we get to my work, and I'm getting out of the car, and they finally give me their names. Well, Randy says his name, and I'm like, dude, you were on Cops one time, weren't you? And he's like, yeah, several times. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I should have made you sign something, man.
Well, because here's the thing, Randy, that you might not know. Maybe you know now or didn't know at the time, but we actually, as friends, we've known each other for decades. And as friends for the last 20 years, probably 25 years, all of our buddies, what we would do on Saturday night is it's the guys' night. So what we'd do is we'd hang out, we'd get a bunch of beers, and we'd sit around and we'd watch Cops and AMW, you know. That was something we did for literally almost every weekend. You know, not every weekend, obviously, but a lot of weekends. We'd be like, hey, it's guys' night. We're going to go hang out, and we'd be like, yeah, we're going to go watch some Cops and AM, you know, John Walsh, you know, and watch Cops. And so we did that for a long time. So Max has probably seen, almost, I would say 90% of Cops episodes. So.
Well, okay, listen, if the fact that you guys got together and watched Cops on Saturday night, you guys needed to get a bunch of girlfriends, okay?
Yeah, most likely. Yeah,
you're probably right.
That's true. That's true. But that's a whole nother interview that we could go.
You're right. That's a whole different story. You're right.
So you were obviously were a police officer in Vegas. How long were you a police officer in Vegas?
Well, I was a police officer for 34 years total, but I had 10 years in New Jersey and then 24 with Las Vegas Metro.
And when did you retire?
Well, I retired after I had a stroke in my police car in 2010.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
So that's
well. You know what I think was interesting about that is your mentor, that John Rogerson guy that you talked about in your book in the beginning when you first wanted to get into police work. He actually wound up dying of a heart attack on the job, you know, and now you have a stroke on the job. It's just kind of strange like that.
Yeah, there was. He was. I was a cadet in Princeton. I was a young. I got hired as a cadet in my junior year in high school, and Johnny was this gruff old veteran, and he was edging towards his retirement, and he liked to pretend that he was a hard ass, but this guy had literally a heart of gold, and I tested for Princeton PD, but I was only 18. Okay, so they weren't going to hire me, but they wanted to, you know, let me know that they respected me, and so they put me number 2 on the list because they generally only hired every 3 or 4 years. So Johnny was a friend. Johnny was an individual who was this crusty desk officer. When I say desk officer, he was a patrolman, but he couldn't go out on the street anymore because he had some heart issues. And then I graduated from high school. I tested for the police department. They put me number 2 on the list, and they hired the guy ahead of me. But I was a special officer, which meant that during certain events, I could go in there and help them out. and there was a hurricane that was taking place in Princeton. And I went in to help out, and I mean, it was crazy. The trees were coming down, and it wasn't anything that was as usual. It was crazy stuff. And Johnny was supposed to be there at 3 o'clock, and I was working, helping out at the desk, and Johnny didn't show up. But we just figured that it was because of all the trees down. He probably couldn't get to work. So I'm fielding the calls, and I had to run down to go to the bathroom, and I opened the locker room door, and there's Johnny on the floor of the locker room, and he was dead. And
Wow.
I gave him, CPR, and I yelled for help, and it was too late. Johnny was dead.
Wow. The
and,
fact you found him, you know what I mean?
and because of that, I became a cop because I was number 2 on the list. So it was a very difficult time. I guess that it was the way it was meant to be, and that I'm part of his legacy.
Wow. That's
Wow,
pretty amazing. Pretty amazing stuff, man.
so that was back in New Jersey when you first started out. First of all, let's go back a little bit, step back a little bit. You have a book. It's released. Go ahead and explain a little about that, like the name and when it was released and how that came about.
Well, actually, I have 4 books.
Wow, I should actually do a
my
little bit more research than I.
Apparently, you should have. My first book was called True Blue: Police Stories by Those Who Have Lived Them. It was stories by me and by a bunch of other cops, and I did it because after the World Trade Center was attacked, it was the deadliest day in law enforcement history, with 72 police officers being killed. And I was a cop here in Nevada, and I couldn't do anything to help them. So I decided I was going to do something meaningful. So I asked police officers from around the country to send me stories, and I put them in a book, and it was called True Blue: Police Stories by Those Who Have Lived Them. And I donated every penny of the royalties to the Widows and Orphans Fund for the cops who were killed. And that started my writing career. And now I've written 4 books. I'm working on number 5 right now.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. And the one we're referring to is A Cop's Life. That's the one that I read, actually.
The Cop's Life was probably my most powerful book. What happened was the editor-in-chief in St. Martin's Press liked my story from True Blue so much that he said, "I want you to write your own book, all of your own stories," and that was A Cop's Life. And I got to tell you that book is still doing very well. It's touching lives. I've probably gotten at least 20 communications from cops from around the country who said they were going to kill themselves until they read that book, because they realized that they were not alone in their feelings, because that book is very raw, it's very powerful, and it's very true. And it's all about what you go through as a cop.
You know, I want to ask you, though, in the book, you made references to drinking a lot. You know, like you always said, "Oh, I have my glass of scotch and I'm up at 3 a.m. and all." Did you have a problem with alcohol for a while?
Well, I guess it depends on what you call a problem. The bottle and I were very good friends.
Yeah,
I can understand that.
Or
myself.
maybe not really good friends.
Yeah, maybe kind of like friends and enemies at the same time, as a lot of us know. We're kind of thinking about this. Now, I have not read that book, but I was thinking about this today about what's going on now and how important a book like that would be, explaining how it is from the perspective of a police officer, especially with the way people are so polarized about the law enforcement today, and how people. I don't think people understand how, a person in that position, a position of authority, obviously in a way that they're, because it always seems from what I'm hearing about cop bars and cop only events and just like a very strong and close community, but it must be very hard to try and bridge that gap between those people who don't really understand, those police officers, when it's really like it seems like it'd be a very divisive, very kind of enclosed community, right? That's how it seems to me, at least. Like bridging that gap.
There's been so much divisiveness between, the media has really painted a terrible picture of law enforcement.
Yes.
There's been, so much misinformation put out.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that law enforcement officers around this country are truly dedicated to the people that they serve. And it is unfortunate that there have been, in the last couple of days, some very disturbing things have come to light about the shooting in the school down in Florida. Mm-hmm. And this is something that has affected cops. I've probably gotten, I'm going to say 500 communications in the last 24 hours from police officers from around the country who are sick at the cowardice shown by some of the police officers in Broward County. And this is something that I'm disgusted to even talk about, because to a police officer, every single one of these individuals contacted me, said, I would give anything to have been that officer to take that guy out. And that's the vast majority. So when we see what took place down in Florida, this thing is very leadership oriented. The sheriff down there, in my mind, is a total piece of shit, and I think he needs to be held accountable.
You made an interesting. It was on one of your podcasts, I think, and you were talking about how politics is starting to disarm law enforcement a little bit. Do you think maybe that has something to do with it?
Yes, I do. Absolutely, I do. I know for a fact, because I have tremendous contacts all over the law enforcement community, that this sheriff has been advocating for the softer policing side. Instead of training his police officers in street survival and how to be a warrior, he's been doing the politically correct thing and teaching cops how to do softer policing. And that, to my mind, is evident in what took place down in that community.
Yeah, if you don't know, Max, there was some.
Oh, I know about the school shooting in Florida.
Yeah, but there were some officers that didn't do their jobs. Basically, they I don't know the specifics. Those things obviously are hard to take, because like I guess the specifics of it were they basically didn't do their job with the shooter. So and that's awful to hear, but it just must be really frustrating, because most of the time, people don't realize what it must be like to actually have to do this, have to make these kind of choices every day as an officer.
And unfortunately, I've been witness to this. You train and you train and you train in survival tactics, in tactics for armed encounters. But when it comes down to it, it's between you and your own conscience when it comes down to actually engaging and putting your life in danger by engaging in a gunfight. And not everybody has the guts to do it. And sometimes people don't even know they don't have the guts to do it until it happens. Yeah. And as a law enforcement trainer myself, this is one of the things that you try and do your best to train your people. But when it comes down to it, at that moment when it's there, you really can't forecast. I've seen police officers drop their guns in the middle of a gunfight and start crying.
Oh, shit. Wow. Well, that's like anything. You talk big, oh, I got a gun. If somebody breaks in my house, I'm going to blast them. And then you're right. Once you're put on that spot, you really don't know what you're going to do.
That's very true. You really don't, and that is the same. It's the same with combat soldiers. It's the same with police. And unfortunately, this guy who spent 30 years, he was 57 years old. I think he had 30 years on the job, and it came time for him to make the decision, and he took the wrong decision, and he didn't do what he was supposed to do, what people counted on him to do. And I don't know how in God's name he's ever going to be able to live with himself.
Yeah, that's the real thing. That's the thing that would push me. I am, I know myself, and I'm not the type. I'm also legally blind, but if I just don't have that mentality to do that. That's why I respect those who do, because we need people who have the mentality, who can make these split decisions in these crisis situations to be out there.
That's it.
But even myself, just knowing how living with yourself after the fact, just seems like it would push you to the point of just forcing you to do that. But I guess obviously it doesn't, because it's self-preservation over your conscience. I guess it's a kind of a battle. I guess that would be.
Yeah, this is actually probably gonna open up a conversation that's never been had before in the American public, and I mean, I'm ashamed personally. I'm ashamed of the reaction of these, not only him, but there were several other Broward County cops. But I think from the information that I have that they may have been ordered not to go in. And if that's the case, the sheriff who is in charge of that department needs to be held accountable for that. And if that is the case, he needs to be gone.
Well, and that would be my guess too. That's what it's really starting to sound like. And it's just funny because a lot of these people, obviously, if you're sheriff, you've been a police officer at one point. So how do these guys just forget everything they went through and now become a desk jockey? Is it all about, political this, political that, and ass kissing, or what's the deal with that?
The answer to that question is depends on who it is. And I have done now my research on this guy, and everything that I have heard has been that this guy is a political animal, is more attuned to feathering his own nest politically, and aligned with the Democratic point of view, which is to ban guns, be softer in policing, don't be a warrior, be a guardian kind of mentality. And everybody that I've talked to said this guy is all politics, no police.
Send his ass to England. That's where he belongs.
England.
Well, he needs to be somewhere, but he certainly doesn't need to be leading a major police agency. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, books, at least we have things like I said, that you're putting out to show people, because I think people just take it for granted. It's like people take the hard shit for granted. People are like, oh well, I don't need to worry about this kind of stuff. The military, police officers, jobs that really require split decisions and decisions that can change people's lives in a moment's notice. But even other hardworking jobs around, like even construction work, or just jobs that just people don't want to really look at. And one of the things that I think they take for granted is like the pressure. I mean, especially now with all of these cameras and just the spotlight on every single thing that you're doing. A book like, A Cop's Life is the kind of only thing that you can really hope to get people to really see to kind of empathize, I guess, in a way.
Well, here, the reality is that, and I sincerely believe that the vast majority of the American public believe in their law enforcement officers. They believe in them, they trust them, they like them. It's a very small, very loud group of people that don't. Mm-hmm. But there is still this misunderstanding, and law enforcement officers, we are part of the problem, in that we portray ourselves as very stoic, very militaristic in a way that hey, just the facts, nothing but the facts. But the humanity that lives within each police officer is sometimes not shown yet felt all the time. And so I know from serving for more than 30 years, the heart that beats behind that badge and how fragile that heart often is.
Well, I know people that say they hate cops just because it's cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a trendy
right.
thing.
It's trendy, exactly.
And which I think is some bullshit, because let's say we didn't have cops. What would you do? You get these people, we can police our own community.
People hate cops until they have to call 911. Then they usually love the shit out of cops. So
It's probably true.
It's like anything else. It's like that old, what is it, like the biggest prayers are when they're in the foxhole. It's just saying, oh,
Yeah.
these cops, I don't trust these cops. Oh my God, someone's breaking into my house. Oh God, thank God you're here. You know.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true. Very
So,
true.
you know, and then of course you've got just the media portraying all these different, you know, things. But it's just, I think it's just hard because it's an authoritarian position. I mean, it really is. I mean, you have to be. That's what you have to do. You're enforcing, you know, laws. So there is a divide between the public and yourselves, and in a way, you have to protect yourselves emotionally as well, because you see a lot of shit that probably blows your mind a lot of times, that you have to sit back and actually, you know, like any other like crisis situation type, you know, things. You see some stuff that most people do not see, and usually it, you know, so you have to protect yourself, and that militaristic idea, it probably comes from that a little bit at least, because there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of crazy shit that you have to deal with.
Well, that's very true. I mean, you know, when there's a big difference between the military and law enforcement, and yet there are some very
Yes, yeah.
strong commonalities. But the difference is that as a law enforcement officer, you have a 25-year career, and during that time, you have to be officer friendly 1 second and be prepared to kill the person that you're talking to the next. And that's sometimes hard to reconcile individually and you know, within your own heart. And then when the time comes when you are forced to make that decision, if you don't make it, you can die. If you do make it, you could be wrong. And even if you're not wrong, you can face ramifications that are absolutely stunning to behold. And that means prosecution by a politically oriented system.
Yes.
And you know, police officers are hung out to dry politically because they are cannon fodder for many of the political leaders, as well as, you know, law enforcement chiefs and sheriffs.
Well, you know, and going back to you being on cops, okay, with all those cameras around you and everything like that, is there an added sort of stress behind it now? You're going, oh shit, I'm going to be on TV now. You know, like, do you guys have to agree to that, or how does that work?
Well, cops, remember this now. We live in an age where body cameras on cops are commonplace. They are used to it. During the you know, the late 80s and early 90s, when cops began, this was something that was very unusual. Didn't bother me any, because I knew that I was going to act, you know, just the way I do. And I actually saw that there was a really high value to this television show, because it was the first one that actually showed the community what we did. And that communication, I thought, was vitally important. And I think it changed, well, I know it changed the perspective of many, many people, because I'm going to say that at least 25 or 30 people that I know have contacted me, said, I became a cop because I saw you on Cops.
Wow.
I even trained police officers that joined Las Vegas PD because they saw me on Cops.
Oh, wow. That's funny. So it really it wasn't an added stressor or anything, or, you know, because like
it wasn't a stressor.
There was that one where you guys went into that apartment where it turned out the woman had AIDS. Remember the one that hit you in the mouth?
That was one of the most heartbreaking episodes. They actually didn't show a lot from that episode. That was most heartbreaking. That is that this woman had AIDS, and all of her children except for one had AIDS. They were all going to die, and she, you know, I did everything to try and take her into custody because she was out of her freaking mind. But she attacked me, and I had to do what I had to do. But the heartbreak of that particular call, I mean, that's still, you know, these are the things that live with a cop forever. You know, you see things that are,
yep,
you know, you know, some people would say shocking. But into a cop, it's normal. And that normalcy when you see that kind of heartbreak, it becomes part of you. And that's one of the things that really affects the mental and spiritual health of a police officer.
Speaking of just personal health of an officer, I saw on your website, or at least on the YouTube website, the group of the Wounded Blue.
Yes.
Would you, is that something you've been working on? Is it a group that's established, or could you give us a little bit more information about that?
Yes, I think this is probably going to be the most important endeavor of my police career. We're about to launch. It's a foundation. It's called the Wounded Blue Foundation, and it is shocking to know this, but police officers and law enforcement officers around the country, when they get injured in the line of duty, they get shot, they get stabbed, they get run over, they get hit by cars. There's a lot of, that there's tremendous risk involved here. Many cities and many police departments toss these men and women aside like old shoes, do not pay their medical bills, do not take care of their physical needs or their emotional and physical health, and throw them aside. And it is shocking how often this happens. So the Wounded Blue Foundation is going to come online very soon. I'm expecting to launch it within the next 90 days. And this will be an effort dedicated to help the men and women of law enforcement who have been injured or disabled in the line of duty.
That's going to be awesome. And it actually pays their medical bills, things like that.
Well, what we're doing is, you see, here's what's happening. You can get, and I'll give you an example. I just got back from Albuquerque, where a police officer in Albuquerque, who 30-year cop, he made a car stop, and this is all caught on his body camera. Thought it was a drunk driver, walked up on the pickup truck, and as he got up to the driver's door, the driver opened the door and shot him 4 times.
Oh, shit.
It critically injured him. This is 2 years ago. They still have not paid his medical bills.
Wow.
That's
not only that, but they didn't authorize his treatments, which would have kept him from becoming disabled.
Oh.
And because they didn't, he now is disabled. And these are the kind of things that we have to fight publicly, and also, we're creating a fund that will help get through these very rough times until they can get the workers' compensation that is due them.
So sort of an advocacy group too.
Yes, very much an advocacy group. We are also going to be a major peer support organization for those who have been injured and thrown away. Our logo is the Wounded Blue, never forgotten, never alone, because that's exactly what these officers are. They're forgotten and alone.
Yeah, I saw the information you had, a little bit of the stats on that, and we always focus on the officers who die in the line of duty, like 147. You said, I think was last year 147 were killed, but then you look at the stats of those who were injured, and it was something around 57,000.
It's shocking. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. 57,000 were actually assaulted last year.
Oh,
so that's
man.
Assault. That's not injuries from other things beyond.
No, that's just assault. That's not counting the car accidents.
Or when you're chasing someone or doing something and tripping or something that you acted that I'm sure that happens. You know what I'm saying? Like just
happens all the time.
Yeah, general issues of on the job issues. So
Listen,
57,000
I
just
talked
from
to
assault.
a young man the other day. He was a policeman in Pennsylvania. Had been on the job for about 12 years. He gets ambushed in his police car, and the guy opens fire on him. And this guy is warrior enough to draw his weapon, even though he's taking rounds, fires through the windshield and takes out the suspect. But because the gunfire took place within the enclosed car, it blew out his eardrum. So he has to wear a hearing aid, and his department fired him.
Wow.
Fired him. That's right.
So now he could get a hearing aid and be good to go and still be
That's
able to do his job.
That's right. And legally, they have to do that, but they don't give a damn. And they're going to make him sue them to get his job back. Meanwhile, he's starving.
Good God, that's ridiculous.
Wow.
It just compounds everything else and other stresses that have to be dealt with by a law enforcement officer at the same time. So you've got that 57,000, and that just kind of makes you think about. I mean, 57,000 injuries from assault. So that just shows how much the danger you're being put in this position, and then when you get through that, you're treated like that. That's insane.
It is insane, and America doesn't know it. That's why I'm creating this organization, the Wounded Blue Foundation. We are about to begin work on a documentary called The Wounded Blue, and we are going to break this wide open. And here's the thing. There truly is well, let me explain this to you. There is a very small, if you will, contingent of insurers that handle workers' compensation for police departments. They're called third-party administrators, right? Mm-hmm. And last year they posted a $57 billion, that's with a B, billion-dollar profit. Well, how did they do that? They did it by not paying the claims.
Oh, Jesus. So they're racking up a profit, not doing their job.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. It is shocking, and here's the worst part. They have paid off most of the state legislatures so that they are immune from lawsuits.
Oh, man. It's like, it just makes you grit your teeth. You know what I mean?
Well, let me put it this way. I've done a lot of stuff in policing, and I think this is probably the most important thing that I've ever done is being an advocate for these men and women. And we're going to change the laws, and we are going to make these officers' lives better. That's what this is all about.
You know, the scariest thing to me, I think, man, even it's probably scarier than getting shot or getting run over as a police officer, I would think, would be getting bit by somebody who has AIDS or getting stuck by a dirty needle.
Right. And this happens routinely.
Yes.
I mean, when you talk about the injuries to police officers, in that 57,000 number that you just rattled off, that is the same thing as people biting, scratching, any physical attack. That's what it's all about, and it happens all the time.
I guess with that though is like you're not sick right away. It's not like getting shot and you're going.
Right. It takes 6 months that you're in constant fear and you're being tested all the time. This happened to me. It's happened to almost every cop that I know.
So you went through like a period where you thought you were infected.
Well, I didn't think that I was infected, but I knew that I had the risk for that infection after I got bit by this.
Yeah, so something that's gonna cause you to toss and turn a bit every night, maybe.
Oh yeah. Listen, it's on your mind all the time. And the other part of this is that even if it didn't happen yesterday, it may happen tomorrow.
Yeah. I just find it stunning that I thought that 57,000 included other types of injury. That's why it was, and that's still a staggering number if you think about it. 57,000 including some injury, because people don't even think about it. They think of only the sensational stories. But just for assault, and is that just other assault by humans? Because obviously you have to deal with animals and maybe
that 57,000 is only assaults by other people.
Yeah.
Wow. So that doesn't even include animals.
No, it doesn't include animals or any other kind of accidents.
No. That's correct.
Even car accidents and chases, it doesn't include those either?
Nope.
Wow, just physical interactions between two people or multiple people and a police officer. That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, consider this. There's only 900,000 police officers in the entire United States, state, federal, and local. Out of that, maybe 500,000 actually work the streets. Then take 57,000 and you realize how startling that figure truly is of people being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's just people being attacked. So you have a 10% chance, over a 10% chance as a police on-duty police officer.
That's only
getting,
1 year.
Yeah, in 1 year getting physically. So in 10 years, you pretty much have a guarantee.
Okay, let me say this. It's not a matter of if.
It's a matter of when. Because the way you're dealing with interacting with the different kinds of people and the situations, it's just bound to happen. But no one wants to think about the guy getting, the black eye or even the broken nose or even those kind of things. That's still a situation where you've been, assaulted and you've willingly put yourself in that situation to do so for other people. And then to not have the funds and the support, and not just the funds, which is one thing, but the familial support, like I think you were mentioning, just like it's kind of comparable to veterans, but obviously a little different. But the fact is that no one's focusing on these people that have the same kind of problems, like family. Like when you're injured and disabled, you got to take care of your family. Your family needs support. So that's probably not there either, I would assume.
Well, here's the thing. I'll tell you a conversation I had just the other day. This young man has got 4 years on the job in a small police department in South Dakota. Makes $40,000 a year. He's got a wife. He's got 3 children. Almost every police officer in the United States doesn't make enough money. I mean, at $40,000 a year, you're lucky to, pay the bills. So they work extra jobs. They work security jobs and they work traffic jobs to try and make extra money to feed their families. So this young man, wife, 3 kids, gets in a fight with a suspect. The suspect tears both of his arms out of his sockets.
Oh, shit.
Severely injures him. And he's going to require multiple surgeries, and he's going to require a great deal of rehabilitation. His police department puts him on what they call temporary disability, which reduces his pay by 1/3. He's now only making 2/3 of his pay. And then his wife has to quit her job in order to take care of him because his health care doesn't pay for it. He cannot feed his children. He cannot buy them diapers. They have to rely on charity to pay for his food.
Man. And he's working for the police department. He's a public servant, and this is how they thank him. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And not only thank him, they don't care. And he calls me, and listen, I'm nobody. I'm a law enforcement advocate. I have a public persona, and he contacts me because he has no one else to turn to. So he is one of the reasons why I'm creating the Wounded Blue Foundation. And his story is repeated over and over and over again. It's heartbreaking. It's wrong. It's a malignancy. And the people of America don't know it. Once they do know it, they will respond, I believe, just like they responded to the veterans of this country and said, enough is enough. We're going to help.
You hope so. Because now it's the hip, like we were saying, it's hip to hate cops, but it's hip to love veterans,
Well, you know what? I got to tell you this. I don't believe that. I believe that most of Americans do believe in their law enforcement officers. Besides all the insanity that you've heard, all the crazy anti-cop stuff,
it's the media.
I've had more cops contact me and say, you know what? I was in a restaurant. I went to go pay my bill, and somebody paid my lunch tab or my dinner tab. I have more cops coming up to me saying that people have walked up to them and said, thank you for your service, than ever before. So I think the pendulum is swinging. I think that the vast majority of Americans believe in their law enforcement officers, and I think that the Wounded Blue Foundation is going to change lives. It's going to touch families all over this country, and it's going to bring the police and the people closer together, which is my ultimate goal.
Wow, It's amazing, we'll post the links to all that information at on the YouTube page. But it's also kind of brings up something else that's really frustrating, because I think you're kind of right, and I think Max kind of brings the point out, is that everyone is told by the media that everyone hates cops, because the media has an agenda, and the media wants everyone to mistrust the authority and the cops, because they basically want everyone to listen. Well, I have a lot of theories on that, but the media is basically extremely corrupt and extremely controlling of our society in a lot of ways. And people, I think that with the idea of people going and paying for the cops' meal, in a way they're saying, hey, we don't believe that bullshit, but it's still being put forth as if it's the main, the main way people feel about police.
You're absolutely right. The narrative,
yes,
is false. And let me give you a little CNN story. I've been a commentator on law enforcement issues for a lot of years. I've given interviews all over the world, from television stations in Germany to newspapers in Sweden. I've been out there. Well, one of the only times that CNN ever contacted me was right after the Dallas police shooting. And I was actually kind of surprised that they did reach out to me, because, I'm pretty outspoken about my opinions. Mm-hmm. But they did. They reached out to me and they said, we want to talk to you. They set up an interview. Here's the date. Here's the time. We want to talk to you about the Dallas police shooting. And then a producer called me just before the show was supposed to take place. And this producer did something I've never, ever had happen to me before in the thousands of interviews I've given. They asked me how I was going to answer the questions.
Oh.
And I told them. And they canceled the interview.
Oh, wow. Really?
This is what CNN's been doing. The recent story about the town hall stuff with the young gentleman who had to leave the town hall meeting because he felt that they were giving him questions or forcing him to ask a specific question in the town hall when he had a bunch of his own questions to ask. That doesn't surprise me, because it's an agenda, it's a narrative, and they don't want you to spout off. Maybe what they're probably doing is getting someone, they can tell how competent you are at interviews, and they can tell that you have good questions and good answers and good opinions that are actually based upon experience, and they're like, oh no, we need someone else who's going to fit the narrative that we're looking for.
Oh, listen, I've watched some of the law enforcement commentators on CNN, and I want to crawl through the television and punch them in the face, because they're freaking traitors. They have been so enamored by the camera that they're willing to sell their souls for 15 minutes of fame, and that to me is pathetic.
What's the reason for that agenda, do you think? Is it to kind of create turmoil? What good can come out of doing that?
Yes. I mean, the ratings that CNN got when they, during the Ferguson debacle, were the greatest lie that's ever been perpetuated against law enforcement, was put out by the media and perpetuated for eternity. It's still being perpetuated, of hands up, don't shoot. Of course, that was entire bullshit. Yeah. CNN ran with that. They must have said it 1,000 times in a couple of months after Ferguson. And what it did was it created tremendous ratings. I believe that they were in the pocket of George Soros and some other folks.
Yep.
And the narrative was anti-law enforcement.
That was Obama's right hand, man. That was all during the Obama administration.
Obama did more damage to law enforcement. It's incalculable what he did. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And, he actually weaponized the Department of Justice against law enforcement. The Department of Justice, of course, should be part of law enforcement. And he did more damage than we can ever comprehend.
Yeah, he especially just the fostering of mistrust between people is really what bugged me the whole while. Well, they're the police, but I mean, as a president, you have to. I mean, you leave those people stranded on an island, then and it's just. And it just reinforces that us against them attitude, which is what the media loves, because they are obviously pushing a specific political agenda. If you're watching at all, so it's pretty frustrating, obviously. For I would assume, especially when when there's important things that need to be talked about on both sides, because obviously the police like you said, there's corruption not only in the way they treat police officers, but in just the mentality you said. I'm sure it's not like it's a one-sided thing, but we can't have a conversation if the media is handling it like this. We can't have a conversation about how to improve our law enforcement. We can't have a conversation about the real important things about how this kind of stuff affects you as an officer. You can't have this conversation if they're going to be lying like this and distort the truth, which is really frustrating.
Well, that it is.
I want to go back to just a few more things about the book real quick, because I have a burning question here. What was the significance of Pete and Kringle, the dog and the police officer?
Well, okay, that story was the only fictionalized story in the book. Yet, all the pieces and parts of that story were true. There was a Kringle, there was a Pete. That little girl existed. That entire incident existed, but I fictionalized it a little bit because that book was so dark that I wanted to end it on a positive light.
Oh, okay.
Now, but I have to tell you this: that I wrote much of that book while my father was dying in front of me, and I literally sat in the hospital and wrote many of those stories. And so those stories came from a dark place. And when I submitted the book to the publisher, the editor-in-chief said, "Randy, I'm going to have to put the suicide hotline number on the inside of the book." So I had written the story about Kringle, about the as a separate thing, and I added it to the book because I wanted it to end on a happy note.
Ah, okay. Because I was wondering, I was like, how does that tie into you? I didn't know if that was a guy you actually knew from another department or what that was.
Well, let me just put it this way. There was a lot of personal stuff in there.
Yeah. So it kind of worked. I know what you're saying. It was sort of parts of you in Pete kind of thing.
Correct.
Gotcha. And I got to tell you, that hospice story pissed me off. The one with the woman who beat up her mom in the hospice.
That was, I got to tell you, that was a moment, and of course, you remember I left it to the reader to decide what took place. The ending of that story. I did that on purpose because I didn't want to
tell what really happened.
And I didn't.
Well, I figured
I didn't want to confess to anything, right?
Right.
But I left it like that on purpose because I got to tell you that in reality, after this woman did that to her mother, I wanted to shoot her in the worst way, and I didn't. I couldn't, of course, actually bring myself to do it, but I really, really wanted to.
Well, that's why I figured you threw the knife at her for her to catch, because that way you'd say, "Oh shit, she's got a weapon."
Of course, that's it, and that's exactly why I left it in the eye of the reader, so to speak.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty awesome. Really riveting book, man.
So actually, let's wrap this up a little bit here. Let's go first of all with the books you have and where they can be found. There's 4 of them. You said there's The Cop's Life. And are these on Amazon, or where can anybody find these?
They're all on Amazon except for my last one, which is The Power of Legacy. The Power of Legacy, I actually just have a new publisher who is about to bring out that book. Again, this spring, it's going to be re-released. It's a new format. Power of Legacy is a different book than anything that I've written before. I did it after I had the stroke in my police car, and basically 3 weeks after my mother died in my arms, I had a stroke in my police car, and it ended my police career. It was the most devastating thing that's ever happened to me. I lost the ability to speak. I lost the ability to move. I was basically given death sentence by the doctors, and before I succumbed, I wanted to do something that was going to leave a very positive legacy. And so I went around the country talking to people who've done amazing things with their lives. People like Frank Shankwitz, who created the Make-A-Wish Foundation when he was an Arizona trooper. People like Gary Sinise, who have done amazing things for veterans. I asked them, who was it that influenced you? Who is your personal hero? And this book changed my life, and I believe saved my life, because I realized how many amazing people there are that created light from dark. And I have, I believe that book has the ability to change lives, and it's coming out again. Brand new publisher has picked it up. It's going to be re-released in this spring in written, audio, and digital form, and I'm hoping that it's going to become a major bestseller.
Oh, so it will be an audio format, which means I can read it. Oh, cool.
Yes, it will.
Well, I will definitely look into that myself. Is that the fifth? You mentioned the fifth project. Is that project you were speaking of, or is it another one as well you're working on?
Actually, I'm working on another edition, my third in the series, True Blue, Police Stories by Those Who Have Lived Them. I'm working on that right now, and that's probably going to be released at the end of the year or the beginning of 2019.
Wow.
So look out for that.
So you got
the Christmas gift.
So you got the books going.
Exactly.
The books with that hope, the Power of Legacy comes out, and that allows people to read everything else to get more in touch with what you're experiencing, and that's what that empathy is all about, is getting in people's shoes. So let's hope that actually does that. And anything else? You got the foundation, and what else is going on?
You got Blue Radio too, don't you? The podcast.
Yeah, the radio show is kicking ass. It's called Blue Lives Radio, the voice of American law enforcement. And I say that because the Huffington Post wrote an article about me a couple of years ago, and they referred to me as the voice of American law enforcement. And I latched on to that baby in a heartbeat.
I bet you did.
Yeah, so my podcast, it's live talk radio. I get about 200,000 listens per week.
Wow.
And then the podcast gets about 100,000 downloads per week.
Nice.
That's on the America Out Loud Network, which is a tremendous network for live talk radio. And each week I do a show. I do the format is that I do my view from the blue, which is I take on everything that's going on in law enforcement, and I don't pull any punches, I can tell you that. There's a lot of chiefs that are not going to send me Christmas cards this year.
Good.
Yeah, it's shocking, I know. And then I do what's called the interview room, where I interview someone who is a very interesting person involved in law enforcement in some way. Last week, excuse me, I had the chief of Fresno PD, who is a 38-year police veteran, and took on, without pulling any punches, the criminal justice system in California and the state legislators for literally putting their citizens' lives in danger by their politics. And so it's a very interesting show. I get tremendous response from it, and it's on the America Out Loud Network. It's called it's called Blue Lives Radio, the voice of American law enforcement.
Awesome.
Nice.
And
Nice.
Of course we've got the Wounded Blue Foundation, and that is the website for that is Wounded Blue.
TheWoundedBlue.org. That's woundedblue.org. We have not launched yet, but the initial page is up there, so people can take a look at it. But we are going to launch, I'm going to say within the next 90 days. I'm getting amazing response from it, and we're gonna change the lives of tens and thousands of people around the country, not just the officers but their families, and we're gonna bring the public and the police closer together in a way that I don't think's ever been done before.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I think that's a great place to go here.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for taking the time, sir. Like I said, we appreciate what you've done and what you're doing now.
Listen, I appreciate you contacting me and telling me of something that I literally did not remember until you told me, and that is the interaction that you and I had.
On the street, yeah.
And to me, that was a daily occurrence. Was trying to, help people, and the fact that you remembered it and brought it to my attention all these years later, it really made me feel good. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Like I said, I it was a situation. You know about the stories I've been writing and whatever, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna write about this. And then I said, but it'd be really cool if I could find that same officer and let him read the story. So I searched you out and found you, and here we are.
I tell you, man, it really had an effect on me. I appreciate you reaching out. I appreciate the fact that you wrote that story and reminding me, because that's all about touching lives, and the fact that you and I had that interaction and it still reverberates through the years is pretty amazing.
It's like a testimonial.
Well, thank you again, man.
All right, man. Thanks again for coming on. Appreciate it. And
we're going to wrap this up. It's been a Nothing Sacred interview with Randy Sutton. Check out his information. He's changing the world, folks. And anyways, I am Cruise Control.
And I'm Maxwell Silverhammer.
And that's the story there.
Bitches!
Later.
Later.